Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Uh, Hello, my name is Andi M Fawwaz A, and today I'm going to present to you Western Asia, or often to be called Middle Eastern. These are the flags or the nations that are included in Middle East. Middle Eastern. The Middle East is a region that is politically and legally part of the continent of Asia or Africa, Eurasia. The center of this region is the land between the Mediterranean Sea and the Persian Gulf, and the area that extends from Anatolia, the Arabian Peninsula, and the Sinai Peninsula. Sometimes it is also said that the area covers the area from North Africa in the west to Pakistan in the east and the Caucasus and or Central Asia in the north. The media and several international organizations such as the United Nations generally consider the Middle East region to be Southwest Asia, including Cyprus and Iran, plus Egypt. The region includes several ethnic groups and ancient traditions, including Iranians, Arabs, Greeks, Jews, Berbers, Assyrians, Kurds, and Turks. The main languages are Persian, Arabic, Hebrew, Assyrian, Kurdish, and Turkish. Most Western literature defines the Middle East as the countries in the Southwest Asia, from Iran or Persia to Egypt. Egypt and its Sinai Peninsula in Asia are generally considered part of the Middle East, although most of the country's territory is geographically located in North Africa. Since the middle of the 20th century, the Middle East has become the center of natural events and has become a very sensitive area in terms of strategic location, politics, economy, culture, and religion. The Middle East has large reserves of crude oil and is the birthplace and spiritual center of Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. The Middle East was once now the modern history. The Middle East was once home to great civilization that made groundbreaking advances in astronomy, math, and philosophy. By the 12th century, Muslim empires controlled territories spanning from modern-day Iran to Spain, and capital cities like Baghdad and Cordoba become centers of learning where scholars translated Aristotle and invented algebra. During the 13th century, an ethnically Turkish tribe began a campaign of conquest that gave rise to the Ottoman Empire, which would bring almost the entire Middle East and territory as far as the gates of Vienna. As far as the gates of Vienna under its control for centuries, the Middle East's modern borders began to take shape in the early 20th century after the Ottoman Empire collapsed. While the once mighty empires no longer rule over the region, competition over land, oil, and power continues to define the Middle East's modern history. Economy. The Middle East is a region of power imbalances and vast inequality where glitzy high-tech cities border war-ravaged neighbors. It's a region where governments with exceeding wealth can afford to subsidize education, healthcare, and electricity for their citizens, while those next door struggle with some of the world's highest poverty and unemployment rates. So, what's the account for such stark disparities? More often than not, just two things: oil and natural gas, the two resources that propel almost all of the region wealthiest economy, but simply sitting on fast energy reserves isn't a guaranteed ticket to wealth. Amid the ever shifting political realities of the Middle East, sudden wars, sanctions, and price fluctuations can upend the economic fortunes of even the mightiest oil rich countries. Oil and natural gas are the twin engines that power the Middle East economy. The region is home to 53% to the world's proven oil reserves and nearly half of all known natural gas reserves. Together, these two resources account for 51% for all goods the region exports, compared to the global average of just 12%. For a handful of countries with vast oil and gas reserves, these resources have brought immense wealth. Qataris, Emiratis, and Kuwaitis are amongst the world's richest citizens, meanwhile those countries with limited natural resources, for example Yemen, Morocco, and Jordan, have citizens who earn less per capita than the global average. The result is a region of vast inequality where oil and gas serve as the quickest tickets to wealth. Geopolitics. So the Middle East accounts for just 4% of global GDP. The region carries an outsized importance in world economy given its abundance of two natural resources, oil and natural gas. These resources power cars, supply electricity to cities, and fuel freighters that ship goods around the world. The Middle East controls so much of the world's energy supply that when oil and gas prices rise in the Middle East, prices around the world rise as well. Much of this oil, around 20% of the world's total supply, passes through a narrow body of water known as the Strait of Hormuz, which separates Iran from the Gulf countries. So strategic in this strait that experts refer to it as the jugular of the global economy. Recently, however, competition between Saudi Arabia and Iran has escalated into a series of Iran-sponsored attacks on tankers and Saudi oil installations around the strait, prompting global oil price fluctuations and concerns over the potential for broader regional conflict. The United States has strongly supported its partner, Saudi Arabia, by leveling sanctions, cyber attacks, and direct military action against Iran. For centuries, the Middle East has served as the crossroads of empire, given its geostrategic location between Europe and Asia. In the 20th century, the discovery of oil there fueled modern-day rivalries between foreign powers looking to exploit the resource. World War I established British and French dominance in the region, while the Cold War rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union fueled arms races and conflicts across the Middle East. Following British and French withdrawals and the Soviet Union's collapse, the United States became the dominant foreign superpower active in the region. But the disastrous occupation of Iraq, the faltering of Israel-Palestinian peace efforts, and the dramatic rise in American oil and gas production have reduced the United States' commitment to the region, creating a vacuum filled by countries like China, Russia, and Turkey. Likewise, regional powers, namely Iran and Saudi Arabia, back rival governments and armed groups in their escalating competition for regional dominance, inflaming the Middle East already fragile political situation. Politics. The Middle East is a highly authoritarian region. In the feudal strongmen rule the majority of government with near absolute power, quashing civil liberties, free fair elections, and any other perceived check to their power. But this authoritarian government also come in different shapes and sizes. In Iran, theocrats, religious political leaders stand atop the government. In countries such as Saudi Arabia and Qatar, monarchs, including kings and sheikhs, rule for decades, often passing along power from father to son. In fact, the Middle East is home to 8 of the world's 10 remaining absolute monarchies in countries like Egypt and Syria. Generals and strongmen use the military and repressive security services to maintain their authoritarian regimes, despite region-wide calls for social and political reform during the 2011 Arab Springs protests. Few liberal democratic institutions such as free speech and freedom of the press exists in the Middle East today outside Israel and more recently Tunisia. Half of all countries in the region have an elected head of state. These are mostly the monarchies such as Jordan, Morocco, and Saudi Arabia, where royal families have ruled for generations. Often since the country's independence, several of other authoritarian countries such as Egypt, Iran, and Syria over the veneer of democracy while in reality often keep their election carefully or clumsily orchestrated. Or in Egypt's 2018 presidential election, the incumbent General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi imprisoned, intimidated, or barred every legitimate political opponent from running against him. That left just one hand-picked opposition candidate who, in fact, endorsed General Sisi for the presidency. Unsurprisingly, Sisi won elections with 97% of the vote. Only a small handful of countries in the Middle East have actually held free and fair democratic elections for the country heads of state, notably including once again Israel and Tunisia. The Middle East region is still plagued with security and political instability. Civil wars are still raging in Syria, Yemen, and Somalia. Political crises still haunt Sudan, Tunisia, Lebanon, Libya, and Iraq. Radical movements such as the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, or often to be called ISIS group, and the like still operate in Iraq, Syria, Somalia, and Afghanistan. The larger refugees from the war are in the Middle East, such as Turkey, which hosts more than 3 million Syrian refugees. Lebanon, hit by a political and economic crisis, hosts some 1.5 million Syrian refugees. Jordan also hosts nearly 700,000 Syrian refugees. Egypt is hosting about 131,000 Syrian refugees, not to mention the Palestinian refugees who have been in Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan since the 1948 Arab Israeli War. The impact of the instability in the Middle East region has also penetrated Europe. Germany hosts about 800,000 Syrian refugees. Britain hosts about 11,000 Syrian refugees. That's all from me. Thank you for watching.